It's funny. I can't actually remember the last time you were the one risking something. And by the way, the women are always saving the men around here. You might want to think about changing the name to Ex-Women.
Thank you very much.
And that isn't even why the movie was horrible, in my opinion. But it's an example of what I would like to refer to as just horrible writing. When you want to write a strong female woman character, here's an example of how you do it. In the last Avengers movie, Thor ends up making Valkyrie the Queen of Asgard. Why? Because she's capable, she's adept, and she deserves the title. X-Men, change the name of X-Men to X-Woman. That's right. And even producers on the show have been talking about it, and I'm going to get into just the memes of this because it's funny. But then I want to share, as a longtime X-Men fan, just how sad I am that they can't seem to put together a good X-Men film. I mean, you have literal gold. You have iconic characters: Magneto, Xavier, Gambit, Storm, Jean Grey, Wolverine. So many iconic characters. And still, the animated series of the X-Men, Cyclops, the animated series remains easily the best, in my opinion. Now, when Dark Phoenix was announced, I was super pumped for it. I don't really care for Jennifer Lawrence that much, and some of the actors in the X-Men films aren't that great, but I love her story. And honestly, the trailers for Dark Phoenix have looked pretty epic. And in my opinion, the film is a very solid popcorn film. Just because I was disappointed by it doesn't mean that you will be. It also doesn't mean you should feel bad if you enjoyed it. As I've often said, I have said publicly that I enjoy Paul Blart Mall Cop, okay? So take my opinion of films with a grain of salt. I've been a longtime X-Men fan. I was probably right up there with Ghostbusters and G.I. Joe when I was a kid. Shout out to D-Day, by the way, speaking of G.I. Joe. But I want to talk about a little bit of the marketing around the film, which has been interesting, and a little bit of why this movie wasn't very good. Now, Marvel Studios producer says X-Men name is outdated. This drops yesterday. Marvel Studios executive vice president, or EVP, of production, Victoria Alonso, believes the name X-Men is outdated. I don't know where the future is going, Alonso told an outlet when promoting the Captain Marvel home series. It's funny that people call it X-Men. There's a lot of female superheroes in that X-Men group, so I think it's outdated. Well, yeah, but it's also their name. Should we rename Spider-Man to Spider-Person? Should we? I mean, I don't understand. Should we call the Avengers the Avengers now because it's Brie Larson's world and any man in that franchise is just allowed by the grace of her all-knowing to exist? I mean, I never as a kid thought that the term X-Men was a gendered term. I just was like, oh, they're X-Men. Because my introduction to the X-Men included strong characters like Storm, a black female, Jean Grey, and others. So, I mean, I never really thought about it of like, well, it's X-Men, so there should all be men. But I think today, these writers of these articles and people who are activists are just, I don't know how to put it, but they're just dumb. They think everybody else is dumb too, because that's what dumb people do. I mean, I don't know that anybody thinks about that type of thing or puts any real thought into it, and this is what they do. And then you get articles like X-Men, the feminism behind X-Men Dark Phoenix. X-Men finally gives its most powerful characters, women, a chance to fix past mistakes. We're always saving the men around here, Jennifer Lawrence tells James McAvoy, one of the most memorable scenes from X-Men Dark Phoenix. Not even close, by the way. Might want to think about changing the name to X-Women. It seems Simon Kinberg, who wrote, produced, and directed it, in fact the first X-Men movie led by women, has put serious thought into the idea. Yeah, a throwaway line, and to be honest with you, the movie itself has really very few woke moments, fewer than Captain Marvel, for sure. I don't think, quote unquote, being woke wrecked this movie. I think horrible writing wrecked this movie. Kinberg's first attempt to tell the story of Jean Grey, who is perhaps the most powerful character in the X-Men universe. That's true. More powerful than Captain Marvel, I believe. Goes back to 2006 when he wrote X-Men The Last Stand, which was also horrible, in my opinion. The opinion of a man, remember, that likes Paul Blart Mall Cop. In it, the character portrayed by Famke Janssen, who could pretty much do anything she sets her mind to, is both continuously saved as well as proactively stopped by male characters. Little, if anything, is learned about her backstory, and her tremendous potential as both protagonist and antagonist is drowned out by the smell of Wolverine's testosterone. So Dark Phoenix is an attempt at historical revisionism, at least they admit that, an attempt to go back to the comic book roots of Jean Grey as first portrayed by the comic book writer Chris Claremont. See, I didn't think that was the case. I think they strayed so far from the comic book Jean Grey that I remember, and maybe, honestly, maybe I am misremembering it. Maybe I'm remembering the animated series more, and the animated series maybe wasn't really canon. I didn't read Jean Grey's comics. When I was young, I read Wolverine, Weapon X, Spawn. I didn't read them. I didn't have a big comic book budget, by the way. I read most of my comic books at the public library, where I was, in 4th grade, the reader of the week. He defines feminism, at the risk of oversimplifying trans exclusionary, as equality between men and women, and advocates that equality to become cemented in front of us as well as behind the camera. Well, if you want equality, it shouldn't be called X-Women. It should just be called, I don't know, X-Force or X-Group, as X-Force, as Deadpool put it. Certain rules and laws were created long ago with men, by men with very little mind. Jessica Chastain's character says in another strong Dark Phoenix moment. Yeah, that was true. The difference between the Jean Grey portrayed by Sophie Turner in 2019 and the Jean Grey from 13 years ago is cosmic. The male characters in the film are secondary at best. Charles Xavier, one of the most beloved characters and traditionally portrayed as holding a moral high ground in the battle versus good for evil, is now seen as reconciling with the reality of being an egotistical, power-hungry gaslighter. I've seen reviews of the film talk about the feminist subtext, but there's nothing subtle about the clear translation of the #MeToo era into Kinberg's film. The movie is a reflection of the shift we are experiencing all around us and a celebration of that. Look, I don't think anybody's celebrating horrible movies. And I went into this film thinking it was going to be good because, one, I'm a longtime X-Men fan. Basically every character, and maybe Beast. I mean, I love Beast, but like a movie with him as a star, I don't know, it'd be pretty interesting. But I mean, Gambit, probably my all-time favorite. Magneto is probably one of the best villains ever from superhero history, as far as I can remember. I remember him ripping the Antimanium out of out of Wolverine. So many huge moments as a kid. But seeing the critic reviews of Dark Phoenix, 23%. That is shockingly low. I should have probably pulled up the other X-Men films in comparison, but I want to point out that this actually gave me hope. Because if we look at like Godzilla, right? The critics panned it, but the audience loved it. If we look at Alita, same thing, right? 85%. By the way, this is verified reviews. So these are people that actually paid to see the movie. One wonders if they have to verify the critics, if they actually saw it. So when the verified reviews come in, I expect this movie to probably be around a 60%, 50%. Maybe it'll be higher. Maybe I'm just, like I've always said, this is part of the reason I always resist doing movie reviews, because I don't want people to feel bad for liking a bad movie. In my opinion, the movie might be bad. You should just enjoy what you want to enjoy. And is Dark Phoenix a film that's worth a matinee and a coupon for free popcorn and bringing in your own soda? Yeah, sure it is. It's still a good popcorn film, and you're probably still going to enjoy the action scenes. You're probably still going to notice the cringy woman power lines, but they're not bad enough to really distract from the film. I think Jean Grey is portrayed decently, but it still came out feeling like a Netflix adaptation, like a B movie at best. If we look at some of these reviews, they're actually, I think, pretty accurate. Dark Phoenix, on the other hand, is designed to avoid pushing any buttons or doing much of anything else. Sophie Turner shows enormous potential as super mutant Jean Grey, but this botched job doesn't just suck big time. It's the worst movie in the X-Men series. I don't know. That's a conversation. It's a conversation, I would say. It's B-movie bad, innately hilarious, if only someone had told the filmmakers. So much for the joys of X. Utterly ordinary and generic. There's little imagination or inventiveness to either the story and or telling it. The result is a curiously pallid send-off for the characters. And this is all, by the way, these reviews are even with the rename it to X-Woman. These reviews are this bad, keep this in mind, with a female-male character in today's world. So the movie had to be bad. Now, there are some people, that liked it. If you can put logic aside, Dark Phoenix is an impressive popcorn spectacle that offers a surprisingly contemplative conclusion to Fox's 20-year run with the characters. But more people are saying the lackluster snooze fest was an X-Men apocalypse that would have been a sour note upon which to end the franchise. But Dark Phoenix is only marginally better. I mean, there was a time in this film when I took a phone call. I went outside to call my dad to set up lunch for Friday. I'm not saying it was horrible, but it wasn't great. And think of the money they spent on a character like Jennifer Lawrence, who probably got $10 to $15 million to be in this film. I mean, overall, they even pandered to the critics, and they still gave it a 23%. I had some optimism. I was hoping that it would be just like any other movie where the critics panned it. I would say the movie is below average. It'll have its moments, but in a universe, allow me to fan out here. In a universe with Gambit, Wolverine, Magneto, Xavier, Jean Grey, Storm, Cyclops, so many amazing, iconic characters. You have literal gold. You have endless material to go on. And with the exception of basically Logan and Deadpool, they can't make a good X-Men movie, and I don't understand it. I understand how Joe feels about Superman. I agree with him. Superman, same thing. The guy's got endless content, and they can't make a good Superman movie. They robbed him of his own storyline to put him on the same screen with Batman in that horrible movie. I mean, it's just, all I can say is, look, I believe that most superhero movies kind of belong in their own category. I think if you step back, they're not that great. There's never any real stakes. There's too much comedic relief, and overall, they're just the equivalent of 90s action films like Raw Deal or Commando or Predator or any of the Steven Seagal movies. They're just mindless entertainment. They're not doing anything that interesting. And so when movie critics and pundits try to say they're doing anything extraordinary for humankind, that's when I laugh. They're fine to be entertained. A lot of these action films from my youth, I love. I mean, Missing in Action with Chuck Norris, all 5 or 6 of them, all amazing. Rambo's, all amazing. They're just mindless popcorn films whose sole purpose is to take your money and provide 2 to 3 hours of entertainment, and most of them do that. So it's hard to really nitpick at an Avengers film or an X-Men film, but for some reason the X-Men films just don't do it for me. They have so many deeply rooted characters to my childhood, and the movies are just atrocious. It's the same reason the Ghostbusters, there's so much riding on the new Ghostbusters movie. Look, you know what? You should call it X-Women or change the name, because this isn't the X-Men I remember, and it's not the X-Men I want to remember. If you enjoy this film, you shouldn't feel bad about it. I think if you want to see it, you should see it, but this is the tone of a man that was just tired of getting disappointed by movies. I think I'm just over superhero films altogether, because I always end up disappointed. Other than maybe the last, couple of Marvel movies where you had, Guardians of the Galaxy, I think was really good. Doctor Strange, I think was really good. Infinity War, I think was really good. But that's only 3 or 4 out of 30. If you want to include all the X-Men films and stuff like that. But hey, let's usher in a new era. X-Women. I love it. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.